the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. The Lake of Galilee is really quite small. In the Midwest, it would be just a small, moderate-sized lake. But it can develop some very fierce storms, because around the lake are hills that have funnel-like ravines. And as the wind comes down through these ravines in a storm, the velocity is amplified, much like a nozzle on a hose. So in a very short time, this small lake can be stirred up with some very fierce waves. And you notice in the gospel it says the boat was starting to fill with water. In this story, as we see the whole thing unfold, it's pretty obvious that the disciples still don't fully know Jesus and what he's about. And this is a point that comes through repeatedly in Mark's gospel account. The 12 are constantly slow on the uptake, often clueless. They just don't get it. 2 chapters later in Mark's gospel, they are still bewildered when yet another storm pops up on the lake, and once again Jesus calms that. They're still uncomprehending at that point. Makes maybe all of us think back. Can you remember a time when you were trying to explain something to somebody, to make somebody understand something, and they just didn't get it? You tried this way, you tried that way, and nothing. Kind of a frustrating experience. But maybe more humbling, can you remember a time when you were the one that was dense? When somebody tried to explain to you again and again, over and over in different ways, and you didn't get it? Well, I can recall quite a few times in my life when that happened, when I was the one who was dense and didn't get it. These are not the best moments in life. But maybe they're helpful. Maybe they're good for us, in that perhaps they can teach us to be more patient, more understanding with others, and maybe sometimes with ourselves. Now, in this gospel event, there's more to this story than Jesus showing his power over the forces of nature, though that is there true. To be with Jesus, the point of this story is to know peace, even in those stormy times in our lives. What happened here with the 12 can still happen for you and for me. It's interesting to note that the words Jesus speaks here to calm the storm are almost exactly the same words that he used earlier in the gospel to address and silence a demon in a demon-possessed man. Be quiet, be muzzled. That's the sense of what Jesus is saying. As he comments on this gospel event, renowned Bible scholar William Barclay makes the point that Jesus can give peace in the storms of our life, in the storms of sorrow. When accidents, illness, job or financial problems come our way, the presence of our Lord and his power in our lives can give us courage, can give us strength to sustain ourselves in the midst of these problems, in the midst of these difficulties. And Barclay goes on to tell a story about a gardener who, in this garden that he was tending, had a particularly favorite flower that he loved very much, very fond of. And every day he would come the first thing in the morning and go and look at that flower and admire its beauty. One day, when he came to work and he went to that flower, the bush, he noticed the flour was gone. He was distressed, he was upset, and so he went immediately to the owner of the house, the owner of the garden, and expressed his feelings of loss, disgust, and disappointment. And the owner simply said to the man, "Relax. I picked it for myself. Come into the house. You can see it there." We grieve when loved ones, friends, are gone, are departed, when the Lord takes them. But we know that we will see them again, and we will enjoy them again. Barclay further points out that related to times of sorrow, that Jesus can give us peace. It can give us peace in the midst of all kinds of daily irritations, frustrations, disappointments with ourselves and with others. All of us know the fear of storms in our lives, sorrow, loss, problems. In this broken world, and we are broken people, this is inevitable. We come across these things every day, and perhaps some of you are struggling with some of them right now as we sit here. The point is that the presence of our Lord Jesus can bring us peace and strength in the midst of storms. Some years ago, there was a contest for artists to paint a convincing portrait of the idea of peace. And predictably, many of the offerings that were submitted were scenes of sunsets, quiet meadows, lakes, that sort of thing. But none of those were selected as the winning entry. The winning entry was one which showed a bird sitting quietly on its nest. And the nest was on a branch, jutting out over a violent river rapids, just a few feet above this turbulent water. With that turbulence, with that destructive force so close, the bird still exhibited calmness. Because the bird was confident and calm, certain that the nest it was on would hold it safely. Similarly with Jesus, we can be reassured as we rest in Him and as He is with us, that we can and we will survive life's storms. With Jesus, we're anchored securely to survive destruction. I'm sure most, if not all of you, are familiar with that well-known and often quoted poem narrative called Footprints in the Sand by Mary Stevenson. It talks about a person having a dream one night and walking on the beach with the Lord. In this process, many scenes of life flashed before this person's eyes. And much of the time, this person walking with the Lord noticed two sets of footprints. But there were times, especially at the troubled, difficult times in the person's life, when he couldn't see only one set of footprints. This bothered the person, so he turned to the Lord in his dream and said, "Lord, you promised to be with me. He said you would walk with me always if I followed you. But I noticed that during the most difficult times of my life, I only saw one set of footprints. Why? When I needed you most, were you not there?" The Lord replied, "The time when you saw only one set of footprints, my son, is when I carried you." Jesus carried the 12 here in this stormy situation. And He promises to carry you, and He promises to carry me through the storms and turbulence and difficulties in our life. There's a prayer that is something special to me with which I'd like to close. Lord, you have called your servants to ventures of which we cannot see the ending. by paths as yet untrodden, through perils unknown. Give us faith to go out with good courage, not knowing where we go, but only that your hand is leading us and your love supporting us. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.